The stagecoach rattled to a stop in front of the Delta, Colorado General Store, just as the summer sun began its descent behind the San Juan Mountains. And Yates Dalton watched from his horse, as a woman stumbled out carrying a bundle that let out a thin, reedy cry. He had ridden into town for supplies. Nothing more, but something about the way she swayed on her feet made him dismount and tie his horse to the hitching post. The woman wore a travel-stained dress that might have been blue once, and her dark hair hung in tangled waves past her shoulders. She couldn't have been more than 22 or 23, and the exhaustion etched into her face spoke of miles traveled and hardships endured. "Madam," Yates approached slowly, removing his hat. "You all right?" She turned to him with eyes the color of amber, and he saw the fear there before she tried to hide it. "I am fine, thank you kindly." But she wasn't fine. Her legs buckled, and Yates caught her elbow just as she started to fall. The baby in her arms wailed louder, and she clutched the child closer to her chest. "When's the last time you ate?" Yates asked, his voice gentle despite his weathered appearance. At 30 years old, he had seen enough of life to recognize desperation when it stood right in front of him. "I don't need charity," she said, but her voice cracked on the last word. "Didn't say you did. But that baby sounds hungry, and there's a restaurant right across the street. Name's Yates Dalton. I own a ranch about 5 miles north of here." She studied his face for a long moment, weighing her options. Finally, she nodded. "Olivia Emerson, and this is Thomas." Yates guided her across the dusty street to the small restaurant that served Delta's population of roughly 300 souls. The year was 1876, and Colorado had been a state for barely a month, though you wouldn't know it from the rough-hewn buildings and dirt roads that made up the town. He settled her at a corner table and ordered her a full meal without asking what she wanted. "I can pay," Olivia said, though her eyes betrayed the lie. "I'm sure you can," Yates replied, sitting across from her, "but you're going to let me do this anyway." The baby had quieted some, and Olivia adjusted the blanket around him. Yates caught a glimpse of a tiny face, red and scrunched, maybe 3 months old. The child had dark hair like his mother. "Where are you headed?" Yates asked as the proprietor brought water and coffee. Olivia took a long drink before answering. "I was hoping to find work here in Delta. I can cook and clean. I am good with numbers too. My father ran a store back in Kansas before he passed. And the baby's father," her jaw tightened, "dead. Cholera took him 2 months before Thomas was born." It was a lie. Yates had grown up reading people, had to in order to survive in this territory, but he didn't call her on it. Everyone had secrets, and a woman traveling alone with an infant had enough troubles without him prying into her business. The food came, roasted chicken with potatoes and carrots, and Olivia ate with the careful deliberation of someone who had gone too long without. Yates sipped his coffee and watched the street outside, giving her space. "There isn't much work in Delta," he said after a while. "Town's too small and most folks do for themselves." He saw her shoulders slump, saw the hope drain from her eyes. Thomas started fussing again, and she rocked him automatically, the motion speaking of sleepless nights and constant worry. "I have a ranch," Yates continued. "Raise cattle mostly, some horses. My housekeeper left last month to marry a miner up in Leadville. House is a mess and I can't cook worth a damn. I could use someone who can manage a household." Olivia looked up sharply. "You are offering me a job, room and board, plus $30 a month." "There's a spare bedroom on the first floor. Used to be my mother's sewing room before she passed. It has good light and stays warm in winter." "Why?" The question came out barely above a whisper. "You don't know me. You don't know anything about me." Yates set down his coffee cup. "I know you're scared and tired. I know you're trying to take care of that baby the best you can. And I know what it is like to need help and have no one offer it. My parents died when I was 17, left me with a struggling ranch and debts I spent years paying off. Man named Samuel Crawford gave me a chance when he didn't have to. Figured maybe it was time I passed that kindness along. Olivia's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. I won't be any trouble. I will work hard, I promise. And Thomas is a good baby, he doesn't cry much. As if to contradict his mother, Thomas let out a wail that turned heads in the small restaurant. Olivia's cheeks flushed red. Babies cry, Yates said simply. That's what they do. Finish your meal, I need to get my supplies, and then we can head out to the ranch. We will make it before full dark if we leave within the hour. He left her to eat in peace and headed to the general store. Martha Simmons, who ran the place with her husband Gerald, raised her eyebrows when she saw him. Saw you with a woman, she said, not bothering with subtlety. New in town from the looks of her. Hired a housekeeper, Yates replied, pulling his list from his pocket. Going to need some extra supplies, baby things, whatever a 3-month-old might need. Martha's eyebrows climbed higher. Baby things? She has an infant. I figure the ranch should be equipped for it. Within 30 minutes, Martha had assembled an impressive array of items. Cloth for diapers, a wooden cradle that her own children had used, soft blankets, and various other necessities Yates would never have thought of on his own. He paid without haggling and loaded everything into his wagon. Olivia was waiting outside the restaurant when he returned, Thomas sleeping against her shoulder. She had tidied her hair as best she could and wiped the dust from her face. In the golden evening light, Yates could see she was actually quite beautiful, though that thought he pushed away immediately. She was his employee, nothing more, and he would treat her with the respect that position demanded. The ride to the ranch took them north along a well-worn trail, past grazing land that stretched toward the mountains. Yates pointed out landmarks as they went. The creek that ran year-round, the stand of cottonwoods where he had built a line shack, the rock formation that looked like a sleeping giant. Olivia was quiet, taking it all in, occasionally murmuring to Thomas when he stirred. "How long have you owned the ranch?" she asked as they crossed the creek. "My father homesteaded it in 1859, Yates said. "Built it up from nothing. When he and my mother died in 69, it came to me. Got about 200 head of cattle now, dozen horses. It is not the biggest spread in Colorado, but it does all right. You run it alone. Got 2 hands who help during roundup and branding. Mexican fellows, brothers, good workers. They have their own place about 10 miles west, but come when I need them. Otherwise, yes, it is just me." The ranch house came into view as the sun touched the mountain peaks, bathing everything in orange and gold. It was a solid structure, built from logs and stone, with a wide porch and a good roof. A barn stood nearby, along with a corral and a few smaller outbuildings. "It is beautiful," Olivia said softly. "It is home," Yates replied, and realized he meant it more than he had in a long time. He helped her down from the wagon, careful of the baby, and carried her single worn carpet bag inside. The house smelled of dust and stale air, and Yates felt a moment of embarrassment at the dirty dishes stacked in the kitchen, the unmade bed visible through his bedroom door, the general disorder of a man living alone. "I told you it was a mess," he said. But Olivia was smiling, the first real smile he had seen from her. "It is nothing some cleaning will not fix. Where is that room you mentioned?" He showed her to what had been his mother's space, a corner room with windows facing east and south. Someone had left a bed frame and mattress, and there was a bureau against one wall. Yates brought in the cradle and set it up while Olivia laid Thomas down carefully. "Thank you," she said, and this time when tears came, she let them fall. You have no idea what this means. I was so scared. I didn't know what I was going to do. Yates shifted uncomfortably, unused to such raw emotion. You're safe here, both of you. I give you my word on that. That first night, Yates slept in his own bed listening to the unfamiliar sounds of another person moving around his house. He heard Olivia get up twice to tend to Thomas, heard her soft voice singing lullabies he didn't recognize. It was strange having people here after so long alone, but not unpleasant. Just different. Morning came early as it always did on a ranch. Yates was up before dawn, feeding horses and checking on the cattle in the near pasture. When he came back for breakfast, he found Olivia already in the kitchen, Thomas sleeping in the cradle. She had moved to where she could see him. The smell of fresh coffee and frying bacon made his stomach growl. I found eggs in the hen house, she said, looking uncertain. I hope that was all right, and there was bacon in the cold cellar. That's what it is there for, Yates assured her. Smells better than anything I have cooked in months. They ate together at the kitchen table, an awkward formality between them. Olivia kept her eyes down, and Yates searched for something to say that wouldn't sound foolish. You don't have to be nervous, he finally said. I am not going to hurt you or take advantage. I meant what I said about this being a job, nothing more. Olivia looked up at him then, really looked at him, and he saw her shoulders relax slightly. I believe you. I am just not used to kindness anymore. It has been a long time. Where did you come from, if you don't mind me asking? She hesitated, then seemed to decide the truth, or at least part of it, was safe enough. Kansas originally. A town called Lawrence. After my father died and Thomas was born, I stayed with my aunt for a time, but she made it clear we were not welcome, said I had brought shame on the family. So I left. Because you had a baby and no husband. Yes. The word was clipped, defensive. Yates nodded slowly. People can be cruel about things that are none of their business. What you did before coming here doesn't matter to me. What matters is the work you do and how you conduct yourself on my land. Everything else is your own affair. Something in Olivia's face softened. Thank you. The days fell into a rhythm after that. Olivia proved to be as good as her word, transforming the ranch house from a bachelor's neglected dwelling into a proper home. She cleaned and organized, cooked meals that actually had flavor, and even started a small vegetable garden near the house. Thomas grew and thrived, his cries becoming more robust, his eyes beginning to focus and follow movement. Yates found himself timing his work to be near the house more often. He told himself it was just to check if Olivia needed anything, but the truth was more complicated. He liked hearing her sing while she worked. He liked the way she laughed when Thomas did something amusing. He liked the gentle order she had brought to his life. 2 months passed before he admitted to himself that what he felt was more than simple appreciation for a good housekeeper. It was a Sunday, and Yates had declared it a day of rest. He sat on the porch mending a bridle while Olivia did the same with one of Thomas's little gowns. The baby lay on a blanket at her feet, trying to catch his own toes. He looks happy, Yates observed. He is. We both are. Olivia set down her sewing and watched Thomas with such love it made Yates's chest ache. I never thought I would feel safe again, but here with you I do. I am glad, Yates said, and meant it completely. She turned to look at him, and something passed between them in that moment, something unspoken but real. Yates felt it settle into his bones with the weight of certainty. Can I tell you something? Olivia asked softly. Anything. Thomas's father didn't die of cholera. I lied about that. She took a shaky breath. His father was a man I thought I loved. He was charming and handsome and said all the right things. He promised to marry me. But when I told him I was carrying his child, he called me terrible names and said the baby wasn't his responsibility. He left town the next day. I never saw him again. Yates set aside the bridle. That must have been hard. It was devastating. My father had already passed and my mother died when I was young. My aunt took me in, but she was so ashamed. She said I had ruined myself, that no decent man would ever want me now. When Thomas was born, she barely looked at him. So I took what little money I had and got on a stage heading west. I didn't even know where I was going, just away. I am glad you ended up here, Yates said quietly. So am I. Olivia wiped at her eyes. You have been kinder to me than I had any right to expect. You treat Thomas like he matters, like he is worth something. His own father didn't want him, but you, a stranger, you have given us both a chance at a real life. Yates moved from his chair to sit beside her on the porch steps. Thomas is a good baby, and you are a good mother. What his father did says everything about him and nothing about either of you. Do you really believe that? I do. And more than that, Olivia, I think you should know that I have come to care for you both. Not just as my housekeeper and her child, as more than that. Olivia's eyes widened. Yates, you don't have to say that. You have already done so much. I am not saying it out of obligation. I am saying it because it is true. He took her hand carefully, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. I know it has only been a couple of months. I know you probably think I am crazy, but I wake up every morning looking forward to seeing you. I think about you when I am out working. I find excuses to come back to the house just to hear your voice. And when I hold Thomas, when he wraps his little fingers around mine, my heart feels so full I can barely breathe. Oh, Yates, Olivia whispered, and tears spilled down her cheeks. I am not asking you to feel the same way, Yates continued. I just needed you to know. Needed you to understand that you are not just passing through my life. You and Thomas, you have become part of it, part of what makes this place home. Olivia leaned into him, and Yates wrapped his arm around her shoulders. They sat like that as the sun climbed higher, Thomas making happy gurgling sounds at their feet. I care for you too, Olivia finally said. I have been so scared to admit it, even to myself. I was afraid you would think I was trying to trap you, that I was using you. But the truth is, somewhere between your kindness and the way you look at Thomas like he is precious, I fell in love with you. Yates turned her face toward his calloused hand gentle against her cheek. Can I kiss you? Yes, she breathed, and when their lips met, it felt like coming home after a long journey. From that day forward, everything changed and yet nothing did. They were still careful around each other, aware of the newness of what lay between them. But now Yates would kiss her forehead when he came in from the fields. Olivia would touch his shoulder as she passed. They would sit together in the evenings, Thomas between them, and talk about everything and nothing. 3 months later, on a crisp October evening with the aspens turned gold on the mountainsides, Yates asked Olivia to marry him. He didn't have a fancy ring, just a simple gold band he had bought from the jeweler in Delta. It is not much, he said, kneeling in the kitchen where she had been fixing supper. But I promise you I will spend the rest of my life making you and Thomas happy. I will be a good husband to you and a good father to him, not because I have to, but because I want to. Because I love you both more than I knew it was possible to love. Olivia pulled him to his feet, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, yes, of course, yes. There is nothing I want more than to be your wife. They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Delta, with Martha Simmons and her husband standing as witnesses. Olivia wore a new dress, pale yellow like sunshine, and carried wildflowers Yates had picked that morning. Thomas, now 8 months old and sitting up on his own, was held by Martha during the ceremony, occasionally calling out "Mama" in his babbling way. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Yates kissed Olivia like she was the most precious thing in the world. Because to him, she was. The wedding night was tender and sweet, both of them nervous despite their feelings. Yates was patient, letting Olivia set the pace, and when they finally came together, it was with a sense of rightness that transcended the physical. Afterward, lying in his arms, Olivia traced patterns on his chest. "I never thought I would have this, a husband who loves me, a home, a future." "You have all of that and more," Yates promised. "You have me for as long as you want me." "Forever then," Olivia said. "I want you forever." Life on the ranch took on new dimensions. Yates taught Olivia to ride, first on the gentlest mare, then gradually on more spirited horses. She proved to be a natural, fearless once she learned to trust the animal beneath her. Sometimes they would ride out together to check the herd, Thomas strapped to Yates's chest in a sling Olivia had sewn. "He needs to learn the land," Yates would say. "This will be his someday too," and he meant it. When people in town asked about his son, Yates never corrected them. Thomas was his son in every way that mattered. He was there for the boy's first steps, his first words beyond "mama." He was the one who walked the floor during teething, who made silly faces to coax out smiles, who worried when Thomas ran a fever. One evening, when Thomas was nearly 2 years old and running around the house with boundless energy, Olivia found Yates watching the boy with an expression of such love it made her heart clench. "What are you thinking?" she asked, settling beside him. "That I can't remember what life was like before you both were here, that I wouldn't want to." He pulled her close. "And I was thinking it might be nice if Thomas had a brother or sister, if you wanted that too." Olivia smiled against his shoulder. "I want that very much." Their second child, a boy they named Jacob, was born in the spring of 1878. The birth was hard, and Yates paced the porch while the midwife from Delta attended Olivia. When he finally heard the baby's cry, he nearly collapsed with relief. Thomas, now 2.5, was suspicious of the tiny red creature who had invaded his home, but Yates sat him down and explained carefully. "This is your brother, Thomas. He is going to need you to help look after him, teach him things. Can you do that?" Thomas had nodded seriously, his dark eyes thoughtful. "My brother, your brother. And you are mine. Both of you are mine and I am yours. That is what family means." Watching Thomas gently pat the baby's head with his chubby hand, Yates felt his eyes burn with tears he didn't try to hide. The years rolled on, marked by seasons and growth. Thomas grew tall and strong with his mother's dark hair and amber eyes. He was smart and curious, always asking questions about everything he saw. Yates taught him to rope and ride, to read the weather and the land. They spent hours together, man and boy, building a bond that went beyond blood. Jacob was different, quieter, and more contemplative. He preferred books to cattle, and Olivia ordered schoolbooks from back east to teach both boys to read and cipher. Sometimes Yates would come in from the fields to find all three of them bent over a slate, Jacob's tongue poking out in concentration as he formed his letters. In 1881, Olivia gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah. She had Yates's blue eyes and blonde hair, and she wrapped her father completely around her tiny finger from the moment she was born. Thomas, now 5, took his role as big brother seriously, always making sure she had her favorite blanket. Jacob, 3, would sing to her when she cried. The ranch prospered. With Olivia's sharp mind for numbers and Yates's hard work, they expanded their herd and built a reputation for quality cattle. They added on to the house, giving each child their own room, building a proper dining room for their growing family. There were hard times too. A drought in 1882 that killed off a quarter of their herd. A winter so harsh they lost 3 horses. The time Sarah got pneumonia and they thought they might lose her. But they weathered it all together, Yates and Olivia, their partnership growing stronger with each challenge. Thomas never asked about his real father. As far as he knew, as far as anyone knew, Yates was his father in every sense, and Yates made sure the boy never had reason to question it. He loved Thomas with the same fierce devotion he gave Jacob and Sarah. On Thomas's 10th birthday, Yates took him out to the north pasture where the best grazing was. They sat on a split-rail fence, looking out over land that rolled toward the mountains. "Son, there is something I want to talk to you about," Yates began, his heart hammering. Thomas looked up at him with those amber eyes so like his mother's. "Yes, Papa," Yates took a breath. Olivia had said it was time that Thomas was old enough to understand. "Do you know how much I love you?" Thomas nodded. "Same as you love Jacob and Sarah." "That is right. Exactly the same. And I want you to know that no matter what anyone ever tells you, no matter what you might hear someday, you are my son. You have been since the first day I met you when you were just a tiny baby. Do you understand?" "I know, Papa. You have told me lots of times." "Good. Because it is the truest thing I know." Yates pulled the boy close. "You are going to inherit this ranch someday, you and your brother and sister. It will be yours because you are mine, because I choose you every single day." Thomas hugged him back fiercely. "I love you too, Papa." When Thomas was 15, tall and broad-shouldered, working the ranch like he had been born to it, a stranger came through Delta asking questions. Yates heard about it from Gerald Simmons when he was in town for supplies. "Fellow was asking about a woman who came through about 15 years back," Gerald said quietly. "Had a baby with her. Dark-haired woman," he said, "name of Olivia." Yates felt ice settle in his stomach. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. Told him lots of people pass through and I can't remember them all." But Yates, he seemed determined, said he had business to settle. "I appreciate the warning," Yates said, loading his wagon faster than planned. He rode home hard, finding Olivia in the garden with Sarah helping her weed the vegetables. Jacob was visible in the pasture moving cattle. Thomas was in the barn. "Olivia, I need to talk to you. Now." She saw his face and immediately stood, telling Sarah to go find her brother. When they were alone, Yates told her everything. The color drained from Olivia's face. "After all these years, what could he possibly want? I don't know. But I am not going to let him hurt you or Thomas. I promise you that." The stranger showed up 3 days later, riding up to the ranch house like he owned the place. Yates was ready, standing on the porch with his rifle across his arms, not threatening, just present. The man was older than Yates expected, maybe 40, with graying hair and expensive clothes that marked him as someone with money. He dismounted and approached with a smooth smile that set Yates's teeth on edge. "Good afternoon. I am looking for Olivia Emerson. I was told she might be here." "Who's asking?" Yates kept his voice level, "an old friend. My name is Richard Sterling. I knew Olivia in Kansas many years ago. She is Olivia Dalton now, my wife. And whatever business you think you have with her is 15 years too late." Richard's smile faltered. "I just want to talk to her and to see the boy. Thomas, I believe his name is." "You have no claim on either of them," Yates said, his hands tightening on the rifle. "You lost that right when you abandoned her." "I made a mistake. I was young and foolish." Richard spread his hands in a gesture of conciliation. "I have thought about them all these years. I want to make amends. I am a wealthy man now. I can provide for the boy, give him opportunities." "He has opportunities. He has a home and a family who loves him. He has everything he needs." The door behind Yates opened and Olivia stepped out. She looked at Richard with no expression on her face, but Yates could see her hands trembling. "Richard," she said quietly, "you should leave." "Olivia, please, just let me explain. I was wrong, I know that. But I want to do right by you and the boy now." "His name is Thomas," Olivia said, her voice getting stronger. "And he already has a father. A real father who was there when he was born, who walked the floor with him when he was sick, who taught him to ride and to read and to be a good man. You are nothing to us. You were nothing to us then, and you are nothing to us now. Thomas had emerged from the barn, drawn by the sound of voices. He stood in the yard, tall and strong, looking between his mother and the stranger with confusion on his face. Richard saw him and something flickered in his eyes. My God, he looks just like my father. Thomas, I am your real father. I made mistakes, but I want to be part of your life now. Thomas looked at the stranger, then at Yates. I already have a father, but biologically I am your father. You are my blood. Blood does not make a family, Thomas said, and Yates had never been prouder of the boy. Love does. And my father is the man standing on that porch, the man who has been there every day of my life. I do not know you, and I do not want to. Richard's face hardened. I have rights, legal rights. I can take this to court. You can try, Yates said quietly, but you will lose. You abandoned them, you have no claim. And if you try to push this, I will make sure everyone in every county in Colorado knows exactly what kind of man you are. Now get off my land. For a moment, Richard looked like he might argue, then he seemed to deflate. I really did want to make it right. I have regretted what I did every day. Then live with that regret, Olivia said coldly. But do it far away from here, far away from my family. Richard mounted his horse slowly. He looked at Thomas one more time. I am sorry, son, I truly am. I am not your son, Thomas replied. I never was. They watched Richard ride away, and when he was out of sight, Thomas came to the porch. Mama, is it true? He is my biological father. Olivia nodded, tears streaming down her face. Yes, I should have told you before. I am sorry. Thomas looked at Yates. Did you always know? I knew your mother came to me with a baby that wasn't mine biologically, Yates said carefully. But from the moment I saw you, Thomas, you were mine in every way that mattered. I chose to be your father, and I would make that same choice every single day for the rest of my life. Thomas's own eyes filled with tears. He said blood makes family, but you are right. Love makes family. And you are my family, my real family. Yates pulled the boy into a fierce embrace. Always, always, son. Olivia joined them, and they stood there together as the sun set over the mountains, three people bound not by blood but by something stronger. By choice and love and years of building a life together. That night, after Thomas had gone to bed, Yates and Olivia sat on the porch in the chairs they had occupied for 15 years. I was so afraid, Olivia admitted. Afraid he would take Thomas. Afraid Thomas would want to go with him. Thomas knows who his real father is, Yates said. It is not the man who contributed to his conception. It is the man who raised him, who loved him. That is what matters. I am so grateful I stumbled off that stagecoach in Delta all those years ago, Olivia said, taking his hand. So grateful you were there. You changed my life, Yates. You and your kindness saved us both. You changed my life too, Yates replied. I was just existing before you came, going through the motions. You made me want to live again. You gave me a family, a purpose, a reason to build something that would last. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one. Inside the house, they could hear Jacob reading to Sarah, his voice carrying through the open window. Thomas's light was still on, probably working on the wood carving he had been making. The years continued their steady march. Thomas grew into a fine man, taking over more and more of the ranch operations as Yates's back started to bother him from years of hard work. At 20, Thomas met a girl from a neighboring ranch, a sweet-natured redhead named Catherine who made him laugh. Yates gave them his blessing and watched his oldest son marry with pride swelling his chest. Jacob, true to his bookish nature, became a teacher, taking a position at the school they had helped establish in Delta. He married a widow with 2 children of her own and brought them all into the family without hesitation. Sarah, beautiful and spirited, chose a different path. She married a banker from Denver and moved to the city, though she visited often and always declared that the ranch would forever be her true home. In 1895, when Thomas and Catherine welcomed their first child, a boy they named Yates after his grandfather, Olivia cried as she held the infant. "What is wrong?" Yates asked, putting his arm around her. "Nothing is wrong. Everything is right. I am just thinking about how far we have come, how that scared girl who stumbled off a stagecoach with a baby could never have imagined this. All of this. Grandchildren and a legacy and a family that spreads like roots. That girl had courage," Yates said. "She just needed someone to see it. I am glad I was that someone." They stood together in their son's home, surrounded by family and laughter and love, and Yates knew that every decision he had made that day in Delta had been the right one. The ranch continued to thrive under Thomas's management, with young Yates growing up learning the land just as his father had. Jacob's stepchildren called Yates and Olivia Grandma and Grandpa, never making any distinction between blood and choice. Sarah had 3 children who spent summers at the ranch, learning to ride and rope and carry on the traditions Yates had started all those years ago. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Yates took Olivia back to Delta, to the very spot where he had first seen her step off that stagecoach. The town had grown, modernized with the turn of the century approaching. There was electricity now, telephones, automobiles starting to appear on the streets, but the mountains still stood eternal and the air still held that crisp clarity. "You remember?" Yates asked. "Every detail," Olivia replied. "I was so scared, so desperate. I had 50 cents to my name and a 3-month-old baby. I had no idea what I was going to do." "You were the bravest person I had ever seen," Yates said. "You still are. No, the bravest thing was you offering to help. You did not know me, you did not know anything about me, but you offered anyway." "Best decision I ever made," Yates said, pulling her close. "Marrying you, raising Thomas as my own, building our family, all of it. Best decision of my life." They renewed their vows that day in the same little church where they had married, with all their children and grandchildren present. Thomas stood as his father's best man, tall and proud, with baby Yates in his arms. "Papa," Thomas said before the ceremony, using the name he had never stopped calling Yates despite being a grown man with children of his own. "I want you to know something. I have always known you were not my biological father. Mama told me when I was young. But you have been my father in every way that matters. You chose me when you did not have to. You loved me when my real father did not. And I am the man I am today because of you." Yates embraced his son, this boy he had raised, this man he was so proud of. "You are the best thing I ever did, Thomas. You and your brother and sister. Being your father has been the greatest honor of my life." The ceremony was beautiful, and when Yates and Olivia exchanged their vows again, there was not a dry eye in the church. They lived to see the new century come, to see automobiles become common and airplanes take to the skies. The ranch evolved with the times, but the core of it, the family at its heart, remained constant. Yates passed away in 1912 at the age of 66, surrounded by his wife and children and grandchildren. He died peacefully in his sleep, in the bed he had shared with Olivia for over 30 years in the house they had built together. At his funeral, Thomas stood and spoke about his father. Not the man who had given him life, but the man who had given him everything that mattered. "My father was not a perfect man," Thomas said, his voice steady despite the tears on his face. "But he was a good man. He took in a woman and a baby who were not his responsibility and made them his family. He taught me everything I know about being a husband and a father. He showed me that love is a choice we make every day, and that family is built on that choice. He was my father, my teacher, my hero, and I will miss him every day for the rest of my life. Olivia lived another 8 years, surrounded always by her children. She spent her days in the garden, playing with her great-grandchildren, telling stories about the early days of the ranch. She spoke often of Yates, of his kindness and strength, of the way he had changed her life with a simple offer of help. When she passed in 1920, they buried her next to Yates on a hillside overlooking the ranch, under the shadow of the mountains they had both loved. Thomas made sure the headstone read exactly as she had requested. Olivia Dalton, beloved wife and mother, who found home in the kindness of a stranger. The ranch stayed in the family for generations, passed down from Thomas to his children and their children after them. And while the story of how it all began faded into family legend, the core truth remained. That love is stronger than blood. That family is what we choose to make it. And that sometimes the greatest acts of courage come from simply offering kindness to someone in need. Thomas's grandson, managing the ranch well into the 1960s, would sometimes take his own children to the cemetery on the hill. He would point to the graves of Yates and Olivia and tell them the story his father had told him. "Your great-great-grandmother came to Delta with nothing but a baby and hope," he would say. "And your great-great-grandfather saw someone who needed help and offered it. That is where this all started. That is the foundation everything else was built on. Kindness and love and choosing to be family." The children would listen, wide-eyed, and the story would live on. But the real story, the one that mattered most, was simpler than all the tellings could ever capture. It was about a woman who needed help and a man who gave it, about a baby who needed a father and a man who chose to be one, about two people who found love when neither was looking for it, who built a life together on the Colorado frontier, who raised children and grandchildren to know that family is made not of blood, but of love. It was about a rancher who saw a woman stumble off a stagecoach with a baby that was not his, and who decided in that moment to change not just her life, but his own. It was about the choices we make, and the families we build, and the love that endures beyond lifetimes. And it was about a truth as solid as the mountains themselves, that the bravest thing we can do is open our hearts to someone who needs us, and that the greatest legacy we can leave is a family built on love. On warm summer evenings, when the light turns golden over the ranch and the mountains stand purple in the distance, you can almost see them still. A man and a woman sitting on the porch, watching the sun set. A baby learning to walk in the dusty yard. Children laughing and growing and building their own lives. A family not born but made, not inherited but chosen, not perfect but real and true and lasting. And in the end, that was all that mattered. That was everything.